Hey, good evening and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, coming to you live from the gun store here in Las Vegas. For those of you who were looking for us last week on your car radio, we got preempted by a Dodgers game. As much as my guest attorney, Clark Patrick, wanted to listen to the game, he had to do the show anyway. So we were still on YouTube. If you missed the show last week, you can go to our YouTube version of it. Go to YouTube on your computer, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, and the show is there for you to watch. And you'll see some interesting confusion when we didn't know whether we were on the air or not, but there's usually something like that on Fired Up. If you're a regular viewer, we mess something up every week. We are on KSHP, 1400 AM radio on your car radio, and so don't call while you're driving. You can go home and watch it on YouTube and get everything anyway. We're here from 5 to 6 p.m. on Tuesdays, and the YouTube version is running a few minutes behind our radio version now. They get usually started up a few minutes in, but the whole thing will be on YouTube just a few minutes later. Hey, my guest tonight is Homicide Detective Phil Ramos, one of my very favorite guests. Phil, if you would, a little bit of your background for new listeners.
Well, I was a Metro Homicide Detective here in Las Vegas. I was an officer for 33 years, and my last 12 years were in homicide. I handled somewhere around 340 murders, maybe 500 suicides, and a very large number of officer-involved shootings. Had some pretty notorious cases, and retired just a few years ago.
Yeah, we were talking about a few of them just before we went on the air. In Jeremy Strohmeyer case, where we both touched with him. I was a bailiff for his preliminary hearing, and Phil did the investigation on the case. There's somebody doing a TV special on that.
Yeah, I received a call from one of the cable networks. They want to do a 20-year anniversary, like made-for-TV movie on that case. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. It's still in the infancy stages, planning stages. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I wonder who will get to play you. Wow. Are you making a list? And
Antonio Banderas.
There you go. Yeah, they're they won't have anybody playing me. Anyway, we are here, and Phil is a master detective. He and his partner had the highest solve rate in the history of the world, almost, as far as homicide detectives, which he won't tell you. And Phil is still, and he won't tell you the commercial, he's still doing investigations here and there for families that want to find out what happened to their loved ones or want somebody else to look into their case. Phil does that. And you can contact him through us if you would like. Just send a note to Bob at firedupmail.com, and we will forward the information to Phil so he can talk to you and see if he can help you.
Yep.
This show is about guns, politics, and self-defense. Every week in the United States, there's several hundred self-defense shootings. Some are good, some are questionable, some are pretty stupid, but most all are food for thought for gun owners. What I try to do here is make this educational, where you look at, we run by a case, what happened, and to get the listeners, viewers, to understand what happened to the guy and whether he did the right thing or the wrong thing. It's not to second guess everybody that's involved in these. It is to point out that even the best ones could be done a little bit better, how to maybe not say the wrong thing and avoid a lawsuit, things like that. So I wanted the first story, actually, we ran last week because the radio show got Dodger fielded. I wanted to run it again because I really wanted to have Phil on. This was a really bizarre case. This is from Wave 3 News in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. A Hillview woman claims she was shot in the stomach during a home invasion early April. Apparently shot herself and then lied to the detectives about what happened. This is from the Bullitt County Sheriff's Office. At about 9:30 p.m. April 6th, she called 911 to report a man had broken into her home and shot her. Then on April 13th, as a week later, the detective filed a criminal complaint against her for falsely reporting the incident. After investigating her statements and analyzing the shooting scene, of course, and unfortunately for her, videotape from a camera across the street on somebody's house, they discovered that she lied, basically. And the detectives then came and charged her with false reporting and so forth and so on. And she shot her. Apparently, she shot herself. We never did really get the motive, but when Phil wasn't here for this case, I really wanted him to look at this and go, obviously the question to me is, have you ever seen this where somebody almost killed themselves faking a crime scene?
Well, yeah.
This lady almost died.
She almost died, yeah. And it's probably amounts to what is an attempted suicide. And, without knowing any more than the details that we have, it sounds like, sadly, this lady was in desperate need of some attention and went to an extreme measure to get that. That being said, I'm surprised that it didn't occur to her that investigators are pretty sharp at what they do, and there's a lot of things that we look at as investigators when someone calls and makes a complaint or wants to file a criminal charge against someone. One of the key things that we have to do with both victims and witnesses is to corroborate independently the information that they give us. The witness says, well, I saw these guys driving away in a white car. There was 3 of them, and that's how I know it was the guys that were involved in the crime. Well, we have to independently corroborate that. Same thing with the victim. Victim calls and says, well, this guy broke into my house and he took a shot at me and he ran away. That has to be corroborated independently during the investigation, just so that you can check the veracity of the person giving that information. And in this case, it probably didn't take the cops very long to figure out that she made it up, and for what reason, who knows. But there's so many things that go into that. Excuse me. There's number one, the first thing they're going to look at is the characteristics of the wound. There's gunshot residue to be determined, of the characteristics of the way the bullet went in, the closeness, the proximity of where the weapon was discharged, and Bob can speak to that very intelligently. These are all things that investigators try and put together just to see if the story that they're being told has some truthfulness to it. And when things don't start adding up, then you have to really start looking at the person who's giving you that information.
Yeah, and then the CSI guys show up that they have everywhere, that have been to all these schools. And, if you were shot here, why is the blood over there?
Right.
And I don't know. That's where I bled. I guess I walked over there and walked back, and it falls apart. If you think you can stage a murder scene or an attempt murder scene and fool guys who do it for a living, I would assume the detective lit up in the first 30 seconds he was on the crime scene, just going, what? It just, don't do this. If you do something stupid, tell the truth.
It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work.
Anyway, questions or comments you can send to bob@firedupmail.com. For those of you who saw the show last week, then I just repeated that story, but I wanted to get Phil's. As soon as I read this, I went, wow, has this ever happened? And his answer was, yeah, it happens a lot. We do offer concealed carry permit classes 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday here at the gun store. Go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and you will find that information. This is from the extract reported on the 19th in Mercer County, Ohio. 419, that's Metro's local code for
dead body.
So it's appropriate for the 19th. A homeowner responded to 2 would-be robbers breaking into his home around 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. He produced his own firearm and detained the suspects while he called police. The early morning encounter involved a 34-year-old intruder as well as an accomplice. The unnamed homeowner called police dispatchers to inform them that he caught 2 people on his property and was holding them at gunpoint. By the time the officers arrived, the second suspect had run off. Police arrested the remaining guy at the scene. They found methamphetamine, morphine pills, a bag of marijuana, and equipment for measuring drugs near a car that the suspect had driven there. The other guy ran away on foot. Police seized the vehicle. They're looking for the second suspect. Last report available, he's in jail on $25,000 bail. And there's so many good things here. This is a perfect reaction on the part of the homeowner. There's no point in trying to keep the second guy. Once he got one guy and the second guy runs off, the first guy's going to write him off. I mean, this is real life. So he doesn't have to worry about chasing him down or firing at him as he's leaving. And he didn't. He just let the guy go. And he called 911 and he explained to dispatch that he's holding the perp at gunpoint. So the responding officers know there's a good guy with a gun at the scene.
Yes.
So nobody runs in yelling, drop the gun and this and that. And in real life, actually, as they came through the door, he put the gun on the ground in front of him and raised his hands. This guy is perfect, this homeowner. It couldn't have been done better.
No, and there's one thing to remember. If you ever encounter a situation like this and you're on the phone to 911, you're going to wonder, why are they asking you for your description when you're the good guy and the bad guy's laying on the floor? They're going to want to know what you look like, how tall you are, what are you wearing, what gun are you holding, and they're going to want every detail. The reason for that is the cops that are responding to the scene don't know who the caller is. So they need to be able to get on that scene and immediately recognize the description that they get from dispatch that the caller is giving them, so that they don't point their guns at the wrong guy. So if you get into that situation, just be aware that's why they're going to want such a detailed information about yourself, even though you're the victim and you're holding the gun on the guy. The fact that you're holding the gun, the cops need to know that you're the good guy, not the bad guy.
And for criminy sakes, when the officer comes in and says, drop the gun,
Do it.
drop the gun and put your hands up. He doesn't know who's who.
Right.
Do not swing toward him and go, but I'm the
homeowner with the
bang.
Don't do that.
We do offer also a ladies only shooting class, personal safety class twice a month. The next one is actually this Thursday, April 28th. You can sign up at thegunstorelasvegas.com on our website there. And it's a great class taught by local legend Maggie Mordaunt, our instructor for that. This is from, this is awful. This is from a lot of media in Erie, Pennsylvania, mostly GoErie.com. I pulled the story from. Tuesday morning around 10 a.m., a 25-year-old intruder pried open the back door of a home and attacked the female homeowner who was there by herself. He severely beat the woman, and then he took her up to the attic. Then he returned to his car, took his previously kidnapped ex-girlfriend, age 25, out of the trunk and down into the home's basement where he assaulted her. When the male homeowner got home a few minutes later and went inside, he saw a lot of blood, signs of a struggle. It looked to him as if his wife had been killed by an intruder. He confronted the intruder because he walked right into him, and a fight started. The fight continued outside the home as they rolled out the back door. A neighbor heard the homeowner yelling for help, and the guy, the homeowner, is yelling, "He killed my wife." That neighbor, who knew the male homeowner, they lived next door, got his gun, ran over to the home, saw an unknown man and the male homeowner fighting on the ground. The intruder broke away just before police arrived, ran for it. The neighbor now shot the intruder who was running away. About 90 minutes after the shooting, the police chief announced his capture. The incident was apparently random as well as violent. Police will not file charges against the neighbor, said a lieutenant with the Erie Police Department. The suspect apparently selected this home at random as he was running at the time from the FBI and police in Oakwood Village, Ohio, which is nearby. He had no ties or connections to anyone in this particular town, Erie. The female homeowner was unconscious when she was found in the attic by her husband. She's still in critical condition as last this was written. The male homeowner had some head injuries from the fight. He was treated and released. The fugitive intruder was shot in the back and the left leg. He was treated and detained on unrelated warrants. He's arraigned Tuesday night on charges of criminal contempt, attempted homicide, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment. They set his bail at $500,000. This is interesting in a number of ways. The homeowner, this was absolutely picked at random. The guy is a fugitive. He's driving around with his girlfriend tied up in the trunk. pick this house just because it was there.
Yeah.
You never have to do something wrong to be the victim. He charged in and did this crime, beat the wife up, stuffed her in the attic. Very likely he was going to kill her later. Went to the basement and beat up his prior girlfriend. The question from our perspective, was the shooting by the neighbor at this suspect reasonable? And the answer, although we will always preach never shoot at a fleeing criminal, in this case, yes, it was reasonable. That's why the police have said they're not going to charge again. It'll obviously be up to the district attorney, but the police said they're not requesting a complaint. The neighbor who came over with his gun had every reason to believe this was a murderer who was escaping.
Right.
And the argument used in court cases at that goes back originally to the Garner decision years ago. He was firing at this fleeing guy to protect future victims as yet unknown. He believed reasonably at the time this guy running away had murdered the guy's wife. He's clearly a danger to society, and using deadly force was reasonable. And when the facts all came out and the police looked at all this stuff, they concurred. It was a good shoot. And that's not to tell you that you can fire at fleeing criminals, but there are exceptions.
There are exceptions, and this is one of them. It's what we call the fleeing felon rule, but you'll hear us preach on here, if someone is not posing an immediate threat to you and you cannot justify that you shot them in self-defense because there was no threat, here's the exception to that rule. And it's one of the very few exceptions that I can think of. In this particular case, with the details that are presented in this case, number one, the shooter believed that this man had committed a violent felony. He was under the impression that he had murdered someone, his neighbor, and that this man was fleeing after he had a fight with another neighbor, and this fight had become very violent. So in this case, like Bob just said, if a reasonable person believes that there's an imminent threat to the public, and unless you take action to stop that imminent threat, someone might get hurt or killed, as he believed already, then you're justified in trying to stop that person. This can get into a splitting hairs situation, yes. But you need circumstances that fall right within this scenario in order to justify shooting someone who's running away from you. And in this case, all those circumstances were present, and this shooting, in my view, is very, very justified.
And you look at this and you think from the other side, you're on a jury.
Yeah.
And this case comes in front of you. Are you going to put this neighbor in jail or award damages for what he did? No, you're going to look at this and go, I'm not going to convict this guy of anything because what he did was the right thing to do. And that's the nice part about our legal system. We have a jury of your peers that look at this. Is there going to be a lawsuit over this? Highly unlikely, but he may find some attorney, the dead guy's cousin or something, or mother may find an attorney to try and sue under the homeowner's insurance or some such thing. But a jury will look at this, and unless you're in the middle of New York City or San Francisco, they're going to say, I'd have shot the guy too, case dismissed.
Yeah, I can't imagine a jurisdiction in the country not siding with this guy, and there's that old adage, we've seen the bumper stickers and the t-shirts, better to be judged by 12 than buried by 6. So, I think this is one of those rare situations.
This guy's a hero, and, it's so hard to say that, but occasionally something so dramatic happens, it's reasonable to use gunfire to stop the guy.
Yes.
He didn't go to the press and say, I killed him because of that. So that saved a lot of this too. He fired because he wanted to stop the guy from fleeing and harming other people.
Right. Good
job, fine job. If he gets in trouble for this, I know where you can find one expert witness who will help him out in that case. Advanced pistol classes are available at the gun store. Information again is on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Let's see, this is from Hudson, North Carolina. on the 22nd WSOC TD9, actually in Hudson. Two would-be thieves broke at a door in the early afternoon at a rural home and forced their way inside. They're interrupted by the armed homeowner. They knocked the guy over. He's 77. They knocked him down as they ran out. When they ran into him, they knocked him over, ran out. The homeowner yelled at them to stop, but they jumped into an SUV and began backing down the driveway. We got a long rural driveway here. It's all dirt driveways. So he comes out a little dingy from getting knocked over, but he has his pistol. He fires at the tires as they back down the driveway. And before they turned the car around, when he was at the end of the driveway, he said he wasn't trying to hit the men. He was trying to shoot the tires out. And I'm sure he probably was. The story gets a little interesting here. The responding deputies, his wife or somebody else called 911 when they heard the shots. And the responding deputies surrounded the area, knowing these guys were driving away. So a reporter for Channel 9, where I got the story, was waiting at the house when the police actually arrived. He's in front of the house holding his microphone when the cops actually approached the house. I understand why the officers would do that. They know the guys are escaping, so they first contain the area. That's a common thing. But when they approach the house, there's a reporter in the driveway pointing out to them, the guys went that way, and here's the jewelry that they took from the house they had dropped in the driveway. He's at the crime scene doing interviews before they drive up. I understand the timing. It just read really funny as they close in on the house. There's a reporter going, "Hi, are you here about the home invasion?" The jewelry's right over here. Because they backed down the driveway, he didn't get a license number. It's a gray SUV of some sort. So now they're looking for that vehicle. They have a notice out that they're looking for a gray SUV that may have the front tires shot out. They hadn't found it as of my getting all the data on this. When I ran it back to the police department, they were still fugitives. As I said, it's interesting they responded by surrounding the house, but that's okay. They knew the guys were out of the house and running, so they don't perceive it as a danger that they need to get to the house right away because somebody's being shot at.
Yeah, and my impression is this was probably a manpower issue. You always, in circumstances like this, you always want to set up a perimeter to try and close off any routes of escape for the suspects. But at the same time, you want to send an officer to the caller to get more detailed information than perhaps they got, from the 911 call. And maybe they didn't have enough cops to do that. That's just,
it's hard in a rural area.
Yeah.
The photographs of the area, there's all dirt roads, and the guy could drive across fields and whatnot. So it took a lot of containing. Yeah, again, now here we're firing at a fleeing person.
Right.
This is the opposite of the case we just did.
Yes.
There's no reason to believe, because they fired, they knocked the guy down. That's all they did. They knocked an old guy down on the ground, and they're fleeing. So what? The police run away. He's not showing that he's this huge murderer who's tying up people and keeping them in his car trunk and so on. So using bullets here, as I used to teach in a police academy, you can't use bullets as long-range handcuffs, even if the police can't do that, and they certainly wouldn't have fired in this case had they been there. So the resident saved his property, kept himself safe, didn't hurt anybody apparently. They scoured the hospitals. Nobody showed up looking to get a bullet wound hit, and apparently, I would assume nobody drove to the nearest Big O Tires and saying, my two front tires are going flat. I need tires.
And it's very unlikely that these tires were shot out in the first place. That's that's TV.
That's tough when it's a truck. You're shooting at it at the front of the vehicle, so you're hitting not even the sidewalls, you're hitting the tread, trying to take a tire out with a handgun. they really, even if he hit the tires, probably didn't puncture the tires. We've had some experiences here.
Yeah.
Both of us are familiar with SWAT shooting out tires, and the guy just keeps on driving.
Right.
And
like you said, this is a total different set of circumstances than the story that we had just mentioned before. There was no imminent or immediate threat to life, substantial bodily harm to anyone. This was a property crime that turned into, maybe a personal crime, but if someone breaks into a house and there's nobody there, it's a property crime. Somebody comes home and they get involved in the crime, then it becomes a robbery. It's the difference between a robbery and a burglary. A robbery happens to a person, burglary happens to a structure or a business or a house. So in this case, it may or may not have escalated to a robbery, but even that, if there was no violence used except, they knocked the homeowner down, it'd be a little hard to justify shooting them. And we don't know how far away this 77-year-old guy was from the car when he started shooing, but like you said, all's well that ends well.
he may be a great shot, but even if he hit the tires backing away, or the car backing away, that would be a very tough shot. Here's a guy that kind of went through it. This is WV Always, West Virginia Always, and timeswv.com. Reported last week in Fairmont, West Virginia. This is also on 420. An 80-year-old man opened fire just after midnight, or opened his door just after midnight to a 23-year-old woman asking to use his phone. Here we go. He opened the door, looked through the people, saw this young woman. He's 80. She's at his door. It's after midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? She says she needs help, asking to use his phone. He opened the door. Two 28-year-old males pushed their way in and attempted to rob this elderly resident. The suspects flashed what turned out to be later a realistic-looking BB gun, demanded money, guns, and other items for the resident. This guy is well known, 80, for having a collection of guns and things around the area. It's a small town, Fairmont, West Virginia. So it's not unusual somebody would know that there was valuable stuff in the house. They demanded the guns and so forth with their realistic BB gun. The homeowner, elderly guy, responded by using the gun he had in his hand when he opened the door, a .38 revolver, and fired at both of them. They were both hit. One was dead. They found him when the police arrived in the middle of the road. He staggered out after being shot. This is a warning in this type of story. They do that. People don't drop dead on the spot usually.
Yeah.
Because the guy's in the middle of the street, there's going to be blood and drag marks and footprints. You don't drag the guy back inside and get Phil's colleagues all upset that you fixed the crime scene. Leave the guy where he is. He did. And they found the one guy dead in the middle of the road. The wounded guy was caught across the street hiding. With all the evidence we've collected and all statements we've taken, all indicate this was a self-defense type situation, said the chief of the Fairmont Police Department. Police do not plan to press charges against the elderly resident. There were a lot of interviews in this story about of neighbors, and I pulled a few of them out, but said there were mixed emotions from the incident from others who live there. Some say they're fearful, while others say they weren't surprised. There's been a lot of break-ins. One resident, he said it was the last straw. When the reporter came up to talk to him, he said, the wife is packing, we're moving. This is like the 5th break-in there's been in our neighborhood of a house. The surviving male and home invader will face robbery, conspiracy, and guess what? A parole violation. If you're on parole, you're not supposed to be breaking into people's houses. And he's also the main suspect in a similar home invasion a week earlier. Interestingly, and this was one of the odd things. The woman who got the door opened, who originally knocked on the door and said, I need to use your phone, apparently did not know this was a setup for a home invasion.
Wow.
I'm gonna hold these police guys at their word. They were there, they interviewed her, And she said she had no idea. Maybe they told her there was something wrong with the car. You know, I don't know what all the details were of the investigation, but they've determined that she wasn't involved. She had no idea they were going to do this. And not being there, you know, you look at that. Well,
you can't.
You'd assume she was in on it, so there has to be some compelling thing that says she wasn't.
Something must have really convinced the cops that she had nothing to do with it, and it had to be more than just her saying, "I had no idea this was going to happen, officer."
I would assume the wounded guy backed her up or something.
Perhaps,
you know, that
perhaps.
they pretended there was something wrong, or there really was something wrong with the car. They sent her to the door to get the door open. They decided to do a robbery at the spur of the moment.
I suppose it's possible. The other thing that I notice here is that the surviving bad guy isn't being charged with felony murder.
Not,
you know, it just says he will face robbery. Well, if the one guy's dead, it occurred during the commission of a felony. That falls into the felony murder rule. So I'm wondering if they don't have such a law in West Virginia. But perhaps
I'm sure they do. Yeah. You know, and this is just right after. And even the police saying they're not going to charge her, obviously that's not the police's decision. That's going to be their county prosecutor or the grand jury or whatever. Because I'm sure the lawyers involved for the county are going to look at this and go the same thing Phil did. Yeah, really? Yeah. You're telling me she didn't know this was going to happen?
How do you know?
Yeah, she had to be pretty convincing. But yeah, obviously if you are committing a crime and Phil and I go to rob Justin over here and Justin shoots Phil, I get charged with murder.
Right.
Because we were conspiring to commit a felony and that caused Phil's death. So felony murder rule, anybody dies during the commission of a crime, everybody involved in the conspiracy is can be charged with murder. So this came out good. The guy, at midnight, he's going to open his front door, even to a lady in distress. He had the gun in his hand.
Good for him.
Really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him. Yeah.
You open your door at midnight to someone you don't know without a gun in your hand. You're not too smart.
Yeah.
Way to prevent this maybe is having cameras outside or a dummy camera looking at the front door so they think there's a videotape of them somewhere, and they'll pick another house, locking security doors, metal doors that you can open to see who people are, but they still can't get at you.
Yeah, or absent that, you can just tell the person, I'll call somebody for you, I'll call a tow truck, or I'll call someone to get you help. But it was not a smart thing on the 80-year-old man's part to open the door at midnight to someone he didn't know.
Now, you're an 80-year-old guy and some cute chick knocks on your door and says, I need help. You know?
Okay, but carrying that out, what are you going to do with that? 80 years old, she's 20. There's nothing you can do.
Let's not go there. Anyway, it was all good. I hope, this is a kindly old guy apparently who thinks he's going to help somebody. Hopefully he's getting some counseling after this, because I know he appears to be, from everything everybody said about him in the story, he's a nice guy, helps everybody in the neighborhood. This is very likely to eat at him that he took somebody's life. And it's that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and that's the one thing we talk about a lot on this show is once you've made that decision to pull the trigger and a person dies as a result of your actions, no matter how justified you are, how good that shoot was, it's still, you took somebody's life, and you've got to live with that. Some people deal with it better than others, but it's still, you still took a person's life, whether you were justified or not. It's still in your head that you killed somebody.
Anybody you're ever talking to, some acquaintance of yours, and they killed somebody under these, even good circumstances, and they just flip you off and go, I don't care, so what, the guy died, to hell with it. You need to get away from him, because that guy's a sociopath. And real people are affected by this.
In that vein, Bob, I've handled so many officer-involved shootings, and a majority of them were fatal shootings, and there wasn't a single time when I spoke to an officer who had to shoot and kill somebody that he wasn't regretting that. As justified as he was, he still says, I wish there was something else I could have done. I didn't want to kill this man, but he didn't leave me a choice.
And I had, honestly, in my ethics for witness work and instruction work, this exact same thing. I've never had anybody, I've interviewed probably not nearly what you have, but probably 50 people, 100 people almost now, that have killed somebody with gunfire, not counting Army guys, just civilians, police that shoot people, security, bartenders shooting robbers, women shooting home invaders, and so forth. And I've never had one of them say, I'm really glad that guy died.
Yeah.
They don't. It's a horrible event. Don't get killed. If you got to defend yourself, but there's an alternative, like running away. Find it. If you have a corporate event coming up, machine gun shooting is always good for that. Call Melissa, or rather contact Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com, and she'll get you fixed up. Some other gun news, some legal stuff now. We talked last week on the show that you didn't hear because we were at the Dodger game. California had this AB 2459 up again for a vote just before we went on the air. It turned out it was defeated for a second time. The committee in the state Senate or state assembly there in California defeated it because of Privacy Act issues. It would have required that all gun dealers, among other things, install security cameras to monitor their entire store and walkways and closets and safes and whatever, which is the reason this committee killed it. There's another one coming, which we'll get into in a minute, but this one actually went away. It would have killed most every firearms dealer in California because it also prevented selling guns from your home. If you had an FFL in your garage or something, you could no longer legally sell firearms. And it required dealers to carry liability insurance, which is almost impossible to get because the way it's worded, it's second-party insurance. You sell a gun to a person at a store and he gives it to another person, you're still responsible for that second person's actions with the gun. Anyway, it went away. And in its place, however, well, once you get too complacent in California, the same guys, I put this on Super Nature, it just came up though. There is now a new bill in the Assembly. This is 1663. It expands the reach of California's assault weapons to all semi-automatic centerfire rifles with detachable magazines, regardless of being equipped with a bullet button or not. If it has a removable magazine, even if it takes a tool, it would become illegal under this new bill. It would ban M1 carbines. It would ban anything with a bullet button on it already. It would ban M1As, anything with detachable magazines. They all have to be reconverted to loading from the top of the gun with a stripper clip. It's the same guys, California Assemblyman David Chu, Democrat from San Francisco, and it's sponsored by Attorney General Kamala Harris, who wants to run for governor, I understand. It never goes away in California. I love to tell you that they beat one back, the Firearms Coalition there in California. Great job. It's called the Firearms Policy Coalition. If you live in California, look them up. They're doing dramatically good work to keep the gun rights up. And here's another bad news. Bearing Arms, another website, and a whole bunch of other people reported in Connecticut, there's a lawsuit against now Remington because they bought Bushmaster against the manufacturer for selling or for putting into commerce the AR-15 rifle that was used in the Sandy Hook shooting. And a Connecticut judge set a trial date for Remington of April 3rd, 2018, because the claim is they acted recklessly in making such a weapon that has no civilian use whatever, and therefore could only be used by criminals to kill people. Therefore, they should have known that Sandy Hook would have happened when they manufactured this gun. It's not exactly clear in the filing what they expect to gain. The case is hinging not on the facts of the case. If you remember, the kid that did the murders murdered his mother and stole the gun and so on and so on, and then committed suicide. But their argument is in the court papers that Bushmaster XM15E2 rifles and other AR-15 style rifles, selling them to the general public is negligent entrustment because such assault weapons have no legitimate civilian purpose. So now it's actually going to trial, and this is going to be heard in front of a jury. I believe the manufacturer and so forth, the National Shooting Sports, are appealing this ruling, but right now the schedule is for the trial to go ahead. Obviously, there are other purposes besides killing people for AR-15s. They're commonly for everything from hunting to practice to target and competition and so forth, including self-defense. But the negligent entrustment suit is to actually force dealers to quit, to bankrupt them by forcing them into lawsuits.
You know, there isn't a person in the world, gun owner, gun dealers, who doesn't have a huge amount of sympathy and grieves for the families of these people, these young kids that were killed. Nobody. That being said, if this act would have been in place, this law would have been in place, let's just fast forward, and they're successful, and you're no longer allowed to make AR-15s. Bad guys are still going to get the guns, and they're still going to commit these heinous crimes regardless of what is available publicly. So while my heart goes out to the victims and their families, this law isn't going to stop these incidents from happening. We say that all the time. They're going to find a way to do what they want to do. It's the sick people that are using the guns. It's not the guns. Guns don't fire themselves. Sick people fire the guns that commit these heinous crimes.
It's, this is what the idea here is. This is all coming from the Bloomberg group. Basically, it's funding all this stuff, everyone for gun safety or every something for gun safety, is to end the gun industry by bankrupting the people that manufacture, sell, or distribute firearms. And it's obviously not just going to be AR-15s, as we talked about in the previous story in California. Now they're going after everything with a detachable magazine. So, and the bill, that new bill is not fleshed out yet. We'll assume it's going to do the same thing as the previous tries, which are to outlaw detachable magazines. So everything has to be loaded from the top with a stripper clip, and it can't hold more than 10 rounds, which is what they proposed before. As a crime preventative, no. The problem with the crime is the criminal with the gun.
Exactly. I mean, you don't go after the drunk driver who used his Chevy truck to kill people in the crosswalk. You don't go after the makers of the Chevy truck. You don't go after the makers of the liquor that got him drunk to that point. You don't go after the establishment where he got that drunk. It's the same thing. It's the same theory. If you stop the source, the end result won't occur. Yes, it will. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work.
And it's not the liquor and it's not the bartender in those cases, unless there is clear negligence on their part. The guy's in the bar, he's drunk, he can't walk, and instead of getting him, taking his car keys or getting him somebody to drive him home, they gave him 3 more drinks and helped him out to his car to drive. There's negligence there. If someone walks into a gun shop and says, I want to get a gun because I want to go murder somebody, and believe me, that does happen. It's happened here 7 or 8 times that I can recall. That's taken me 30 years to get to that number. But if they say that, or they say, I'm a felon, but I've got a fake ID, so nobody could tell, so I want to buy this pistol, then the dealer, the person transferring the gun, is clearly being negligent. There's already laws on the books for that.
Yes, exactly.
I know I've told the story on the air, but I just have never forgotten. A lady came into a shop I had years ago on the other side of town. Cute little lady, probably 75 years old. Now it seems young to me because now I'm 72. But she walks in. She's about 5 foot nothing, and says, I want to buy an AK-47 because I'm going to shoot my landlord that SOB.
Oh.
And we all kind of went, oh, and he'd raised her rent or something, and she's going on about it. So she wants AK-47. She didn't know what an AK-47 was. She just heard of it. And so we said, well, we can probably do it. Well, I've got somebody calling the police and whatever. And some officers responded while we were talking to her about what gun would be appropriate for shooting landlords. And she's, the two uniform guys walk in and say, what's the problem? And I go, would you explain this to the officers? And she said, I want an AK-47. I want to shoot my landlord. That's some bitch.
And
okay.
did they calm her down, send her on her way?
They did calm her down. They talked to her about attorneys that work with landlord-tenant disputes, and gave her, there's a little pamphlet they hand out that's got all these, you've got this wrong or that wrong, who to call.
Right.
Call these guys, and they can, but you don't really want to do that. And she was, I don't know if she went to another shop and just didn't mention that she wanted to shoot a landlord. I presume not. She seemed to take that seriously to heart. But that was, people do that.
Yes, they do.
Guns.com, another good website. Second time in 2 years, lawmakers in New Hampshire are sending a bill that amounts to constitutional carry for New Hampshire. The proposal in session passed the House 206 to 146 and passed the Senate 14 to 10. The legislation, it's called HB 582, keeps the state's current concealed carry permit system in place, been there since 1923. However, it adds to the fact that those permits exist, the fact that permits exist do not prohibit unlicensed people, those without permits, from transporting or carrying concealed or a pistol or revolver in the car or on their person if the adult is legally able to possess a firearm. So it morphs it into constitutional carry in New Hampshire. Rather than eliminating the old bill, it just adds to the existing 1923 law that it doesn't include carrying concealed if you're legally able to possess a firearm. Last fall, the article said the staunch anti-gun Democrat Governor Maggie Hassan vetoed the measure when it was placed on her desk. Unfortunately, the local gun groups now say that they expect her to veto this one too.
Isn't New Hampshire the live free or die state? Isn't that their motto?
I think so.
Yeah.
Except you got to have a concealed carry permit to live free or die. So whether this will, I don't know if this is enough votes to override a governor's veto. It didn't contain that information. But the local gun group say she has announced she's going to veto it again because you honest citizens shouldn't be carrying guns around New Hampshire, apparently. I don't know I never can figure out what the reasoning is, because the bad guys are going to carry anyway.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And, it's just the tempo and the state of our states now. Everybody wants to get on this ban guns bandwagon, and they don't think things through. They don't realize that, we can make guns illegal, but there's so many millions of guns out there already. They're still going to be falling into the hands of the bad guys. The bad guys are going to find a way to get the guns.
While I'm here, I've mentioned several other websites where I find these stories and things and backups that I get from newspapers. But I want to mention ammoland.com has become my favorite website now because they're running columns virtually every day by me to
what's it called?
Ammoland. Ammoland. I was going to make a sign, I forgot. That says ammoland.com. It's what they're doing. I'm running a commentary column based on some of the stories I use here and some I don't use on the air here, that are the idea is the same thing for educational purposes, that this is what happened to somebody when they were caught in a situation. And I generally don't, like the TV show, I don't put names in it and don't put usually the city or town, because the point isn't who did it and what town it was in. The point is, if you're caught in a similar situation, this is what the guy did, and this is how he could have made it better. Phil and I really believe that same philosophy. If you can run and hide and not have to shoot somebody, because after you talk to people, as we were saying, you realize that you really don't want to do that. Anyway, that's on moland.com. I'll try and have a sign up next week that says that. They've added me to their group of regular writers. Mention again, we have free concealed carry permit classes Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find those on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Not a lot of gun shows coming up now. The next one up that I found is July 16 and 17 at the Sports Center, back on Las Vegas Boulevard, near the post office there. They are on East Sunset, I'm sorry, near the post office. And that we will be back next Tuesday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on 1400 AM radio, KSHP, unless the Dodgers are playing. I'm never going to let the station have it. They didn't call us and tell us that was going to happen. So
Did they win? Did the Dodgers win at least?
I don't know. I was here instead of listening to the game.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a Dodgers fan, but I would not pick the Dodgers over you. I would listen to you and read the paper.
So we'll be back next week. Questions and comments again to bob@firedupmail.com, and be sure and friend Fired Up with Bob Irwin, if you would be so kind, on Facebook, or like the page. We are running out of time here. We got about 2 or 3 minutes, and I want to talk one more item. There was an interview I did in the paper the other day in the RJ that we've got this bill coming up. Now it's going to be Proposition 1 on your ballot in the fall to require universal background checks. I personally believe that's a useless idea. Again, we talk often about criminals do bad things anyway with guns. The background checks, if, as a dealer, I like them. No gun dealer wants to sell a gun to a criminal. And that's good. Part of the problem is the state charges, Nevada charges $25 for it. So we add a $25 fee to the background check if you don't already have a concealed carry permit or whatnot to avoid that. But this bill saves that by making the background checks free for civilian on civilians. So what that does, of course, is it drives all of the gun sales
to civilians
underground, because by charging $25 more to do the same transaction plus sales tax. So I can get around the 8% by, we're still here. If the gun doesn't work, you can bring it back, get a refund, or we'll fix it or whatever, which you can't do with the guy you buy a gun from on the street corner. But now we're charging $25 more plus the sales tax more. It's really an uneven playing field. If they want to get people to do background checks, I honestly believe they should be free.
Yes.
And the state should quit taxing people for buying a firearm. If they want to do background checks, fine idea, great, do all you want. I like them as a dealer, as I said, because I don't want to sell guns to a bad guy. But it makes no sense to charge them to everybody, and it just isn't going to stop crime, period. How are we doing for time there? We're winding up. Thank you for listening to Fired Up and watching us on YouTube. We'll be back next week.
Take care.
Thank you, Phil.